Alrighty, guys, welcome into part two of our mock draft. We left off after the seventh round. I had just taken Rashad Bateman in the early seventh, and Kody had just taken Damian Harris in the late seventh. So, picking up where we left off here, my eighth round pick was Joe Burrow at 3. That's the late eighth. I really like the value there for Joe Burrow. We haven't gotten to our AFC North breakdown yet, so neither one of us have talked about our views on him. I think the industry is a little bit too high for me on Joe Burrow as a whole. I think most people have him going in the fifth or sixth round, but falling to the eighth tier, I can't argue with it. I think he's part of that second tier of quarterbacks. Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson, maybe towards the higher end of that tier, but with a few of those other young guys that kind of have a chance to break out fantasy wise. But yeah, I mean, I think it was basically him or Stafford at that point from a QB perspective, as far as the guys I was comfortable with being my starter. Wasn't sure if either one was going to come back. So in the late eighth, I really don't mind Burrow at all.
Yep. Nope. I love where you got Burrow. I'm just going to plug this in here at the beginning. Like, comment, subscribe, because we always jump right into these part two. So make sure you hit that like button. We very much appreciate it. Subscribe if you haven't already also. That way you know as soon as the videos come out. So that way you can hear about great picks like this, because I ended up getting DeAndre Hopkins in the early eighth, which is why Joe Burrow made it back to Nick, because if Hopkins would have been taken, I would have taken Burrow without question. Those were the only two that I had even thought about at that point. And, Hopkins, where he's at, especially since I already had the other Cardinal wide receiver, that gives me a trade piece for I could trade Hopkins if I needed to around that fourth or fifth week, if I need to maybe make a move at tight end or running back or something like that. So just all value right there. Absolutely loved it.
Yeah, I did too. I would have taken Hopkins if he had been there where I took Burrow, and I would have just waited on quarterback and hoped one of them would have fallen to me, honestly. So
For
I
sure.
absolutely love the value you got on Hopkins there in the eighth round. Absolute steal. I think we both like him in the seventh. So getting him in the eighth, great job.
Yep. So quick thing here. James Robinson went in the eighth. I don't really see a lot of value in drafting him.
That was a reach.
ETN's going pretty high in drafts. He's been, pretty touted in that locker room, it seems like, this offseason. So I don't really find a value in drafting James Robinson because his upside's just, I think it's kind of gone unless he gets moved to a different team. So
right. I think we need to wait for more on his medicals before taking him anywhere before round 12 or beyond. If you want to take a flyer on him that late, that's fine. But in the eighth or ninth round, you're almost expecting him to be a backup for you. And I'm not even sure he's going to first 6 weeks of the year. So no, thank you.
Yep, for sure. So in the ninth round, I ended up getting Melvin Gordon, which I thought was, again, really good value for someone who, I mean, at this point, I just assumed that they're still splitting Javonte and him. I mean, Javonte maybe it's 60-40, 65-35 Javonte's way. But Javonte, he's he's so high on ESPN because he was like in that second round of running backs. I think he got picked in the second round. And I was just like, wow, that is early for someone who's going to be splitting touches. So I got his second half with Melvin Gordon. I love that there. It's wide running back depth from someone who at this point we know is going to be touching the ball. I will say Kenneth Walker got sniped one pick before me. He would have been my choice over Melvin Gordon.
Oh, really?
But I mean, I guess I'll throw this to you. Would you take Gordon over Walker at this point?
I would in a redraft.
Okay.
I would go ahead and take Gordon, especially in a PPR league. I think he has a little bit more as far as receiving chops go.
That's fair too.
And I actually ended up taking Chase Edmonds, who this is the early ninth. So I took Edmonds before you took Gordon or Walker went off the board. When Edmonds went off, I was looking at Michael Carter, Rashad Penny, and Ken Walker. And I think in a PPR league, as my RB3 at this point, I was kind of looking for somebody that I would be able to plug and play in case an injury happened. And I think Edmonds kind of provides the highest floor out of those guys just because of his receiving chops. And I think worst case scenario, he's going to have a role in that backfield. Worst case scenario for any one of those other guys, they're backups. So I think Edmonds just provided me a little bit more safety, but I think in hindsight, going back, I would have taken Gordon where I took Edmonds, honestly. I just really like the upside in that offense, and I think that there's a decent chance they'll split like they did last year because, honestly, I don't really know why the Broncos will go away from it. New coaching staff, obviously, so it's hard to say what they're going to do, but it worked really well, and Gordon was a good player on the field. So I don't know why they would scale him back a ton from what he was at last year.
Me either. I mean, they had the choice to get rid of him in the offseason and they chose to keep him. So
Yeah,
I would lead that to believe that, he's still going to be a vital part in that offense. And
yeah,
I mean, they're going to be a team that's looking to make a deep playoff run. So those weeks where they can just pound the ball and, keep the pressure off Russell Wilson. I mean, if you could do that 3 or 4 times throughout the season, that's really, really helpful when it comes playoff time. So I think
good
that,
teams need multiple backs these days. You
yeah,
can't ride one guy unless his name is Derrick Henry. And that's pretty much just how it is with the running back position. Everyone wants to see Javonte get 20, 25 touches a game, but that's not the best thing for his long-term health or the Broncos' long-term health. So I think it's smart,
agreed.
and I think Gordon will be a solid flex option.
For sure. So moving into the 10th, again, I feel like this is where I really made rounded out my team. Through the Damian Harris pick, I was like, damn, I'm not really liking this too much. And then these later picks, I had some good value, which really, kind of helped my team out. So I got Alan Lazard in the 10th. So I was between him or Watson for me at that point. I know you ended up grabbing Watson after a little bit later in that round. I know you
Yep.
would have chosen Lazard if you had the choice of those two. I'm still leaning there as well. I mean, he was, he's 6'4". He's just I don't know. Like he's just, when you watch him play, he looks like he can be good. I think it just is Aaron Rodgers. Like, is he just going to be the hyper targeted wide receiver similar to Devontae Adams or not? And I mean, at this point in the draft, you got to take your shot on, upside. And with Watson, I mean, you're just getting a rookie wide receiver coming from a very run heavy, second tier conference college in North Dakota State. So
Right.
that's where my concern comes with him. I'm going to take the, proven NFL wide receiver and hopes that this is the year that he breaks out.
Yeah, obviously we've talked about Lazard already on the show. We both really like his value in drafts right now. I mean, I think the only concern there with Lazard is that he just really hasn't shown production over a season-long situation. So he just has not had a NFL fantasy relevant season on a whole. He's had weeks where he's been good, maybe even 3 or 4 weeks in a row where he's been good, but he's not been the number one on an NFL offense. So there's a lot of questions as far as that goes. But I think that obviously, as far as NFL proven goes, he is farther in his development than Watson is, and Watson's just kind of a complete wild card. So taking him in the late 10th, I don't mind, especially having a chance to have the number one on the Packers. But
Yep.
I think at this point in the draft, you're just throwing darts.
Absolutely. And I think also, we'll see how Lazard adapts to having the number one cornerback from every team shadowing him.
Exactly.
I mean, it could be a situation where Watson just pops because he has the weaker defender in some weeks. So, it's going to be interesting there in Green Bay.
Yep.
But moving to the 11th, this is where I thought I was going to get the steal of the draft. Nick ended up snagging him from me. He took Trey Lance early 11th round. I think that's insane value because he's the only quarterback besides Justin Fields at this point in drafts that has high upside rushing potential. I mean, I would say Jalen Hurts is a pretty good, just line for Trey Lance to kind of be at. I mean, in all honesty, the 49ers would probably hope that he's a better passer and they're not running it as often with their quarterback like the Eagles have done. But that's kind of where I'm going to put him at because he has that potential. And he's going to be the starter. There's no question. So at least there's no questions with me. Do you think there's any chance Jimmy G comes back or takes the job from him or anything? I don't either. So I loved him. I was pissed. I text you as soon as you took that pick. I was mad. Great pick. And even if you do get someone like a Joe Burrow or Tom Brady, I mean, if you have a high-end rushing quarterback, I mean, that's such a good trade piece. I mean, in I would say the majority of leagues, if you're playing with 11 other really good players, the quarterback's not as valuable. You're not going to go in there and grab their top running back or something just to fill that quarterback spot. But I think that he could be someone who's, could be a trade target for someone. Or, I mean, if you get Tom Brady and Tom Brady has a rough start to the season and Trey Lance breaks out, then you just flip flop them and you throw Brady, you let Brady sit on your bench and Trey
Exactly.
Lance carry you. So
Right.
or in your case, Joe Burrow. I mean, those two wide, if you get those two quarterbacks on your team in the spots that you did, I mean, that's unbelievable. So I
Yeah.
loved it. Um, you know, I in the late 11th, I ended up grabbing McCole Hardman. Um, again, at that point, it was either him or MVS that were kind of the two that I was looking at. I just went Hardman based on continuity in the offense. And I mean, he should be looking at a chance to be the wide receiver one in the offense, being the only one besides Kelsey who was there last year. But he just, as a Chiefs fan, I can tell you, he always seems to be a little disappointing when he's kind of needed the most. So we'll see. I mean, if I had to go redo that, I would take my shot on MVS over Hardman. More I thought about it, I think I like MVS a little bit more.
Yeah. I mean, you're throwing darts at that point. I don't really mind the Hardman pick. I mean, late 11th, having a chance to have a piece of that Chiefs offense is never a bad idea. MBS, Hardman,
Right.
both kind of dart throws at that point. I don't really mind it. Moving into the 12th, I ended up grabbing Madison, Alexander Madison from the Vikings. I really like grabbing high upside backups from teams, especially ones that are established in their role if the starter goes down. So deeper leagues, I really like stashing those guys on the end of your bench. So I went Madison in the 12th, and then you ended up picking your quarterback at that point because I stole Lance from you in the previous round in Tua. I like stacking him with Hill. At that point, you had a few options that were kind of similar, but grabbing a guy to correlate with your wide receiving core was fun.
Yeah, so really when it came down to Tua, it was between him and Justin Fields at that point in the draft. And the reason I took Tua is I feel like his team is building their team for success now,
Yeah.
whereas Justin Fields' team is building success for down the road. And I know
Mm-hmm.
fantasy football isn't all about the team, but when you have Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, a couple decent running backs, a good tight end in Gesicki, like those are all amazing targets. Like this, and this is Tua's year. Like he has to prove it this year. Otherwise, they're most likely moving on into next year. And well, they may move on anyway if Tom Brady's going there. So we'll see how that plays out. But going into the 13th, I knew I was hoping you would let him fall to me at the 13th because I was going to take Tyler Algier just to snipe you back from taking Trey Lance. But
Right.
I know if you watched our NFC South video, that included the Falcons. Nick's high on Tyler Algier potentially coming in and taking targets from Cordero Patterson.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't as worried about it until I saw how far Cordero fell in this draft. Like when we talked about him, we had his mock going, a little bit ahead of where he went in this draft. So it seems like you may not be alone in the, Tyler Algier camp, and, understandable why. I mean, if you can get your potential RB1 for, in the 13th round, that's a RB1 in the 13th round. Yeah,
I like the value on
pick.
it. We'll see what ends up happening through training camp if he ends up rising. If reports come out that he's the leading guy as far as the rushing game goes, but anytime you have a chance to grab a guy that could lead his team in carries in the 13th round, go ahead and take it, especially in a 12-team draft. You ended up grabbing your starting tight end later in the 13th round, and Robert Tonyan, another guy I think we could call one of your favorites at this point in the draft. I really don't mind it at all. I mean, he's, again, one of these Packers guys going to emerge as Rodgers' favorite target. Who knows it's going to be, but Tonyan has chemistry from previous years, coming off an ACL injury about midway through the year. So you're hoping that he's ready for week one, but I don't mind the pick in the 13th round. That's super late. And at that point, there's other guys you could pick up to stream if Tonyan's not ready to go.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at that point, I just kind of liked getting 2/3 of that potential Packers pie. And, one of them is going to be fantasy relevant if you have Aaron Rodgers throwing the football. So when we did our NFC North video, luckily that is actually the one with the least amount of views. So Robert Tonyan is going to continue falling to me in drafts. But I love Robert Tonyan at this point. Again, just huge touchdown potential, which is what you're looking for. I am starting to get a little bit higher on Dalton Schultz because, you see Amari Cooper leave that offense. Someone's got to fill those targets. So, and they don't really have pass catching running backs like Zeke and Pollard aren't anything crazy. So Schultz
No,
would if Schultz falls to me at a good point in the draft, I think he would be the one, the mid tier that I would go after if I miss out on Kelsey and Andrews. And then if I miss out on all three of those, I think I'm just punting and hoping Robert Tanyan's there with, a late pick. I will
yeah,
say with some of these later picks, kickers and defense were a part of this, which we're not going to get into. I didn't draft any of them until the 15th or 16th round. I'm assuming you did the same.
nope, good.
So
Yep.
some of these players may have gotten kicked down just a little bit if someone reached on a defense or kicker or something, but
That'll
not
happen.
very many of them did.
Most
So
definitely.
yeah.
Yeah.
So on the 14th, I took Marlon Mack, just grabbing a little piece of that Houston pie with my last pick. Nothing much to say there. He'll probably end up, he would be the one I would drop to the waiver wire, whenever someone has a good week one.
Who knows who's going to lead the backfield there? Yeah, I mean Marlon Mack's just as good a pick as anybody in the backfield. It might just be a three-headed mess. He could emerge. Who knows? But the 14th round, why not go ahead and take your shot? And then I went with Rondale Moore, kind of a similar situation. Obviously, there's going to be some opportunity in Arizona the first couple weeks. He has pretty good draft pedigree, and if he emerges in the first few weeks and ends up being a consistent option, I think he's got a chance to be a long-term flex play. But 14th round, we're throwing darts here. Rondale Moore has some upside. So I think that's kind of the key here is 12th, 13th, 14th round. Just make sure you're drafting guys that have a chance to move into starting territory if things break right for them. Don't just take the veteran that's going to sit on your bench and give you 6 to 8 points every week. Take a guy that has a chance to move into a position where he could be valuable for you.
Yeah, Marlon Mack for me, I think I hit the wide receiver limit for ESPN, so I couldn't grab another wide receiver. So I had to grab either running back or tight end, or I think Fields was already gone at QB. So,
yeah,
I mean, like I said, Marlon Mack, I don't expect him to be a valuable, fantasy piece by any means. He would be the first player I would drop, if someone became available from week one that I liked. But I am going to throw at the end of these videos, I'll have a little screenshot of what our teams ended up being. So, throw a comment on the video, on the Facebook post, Twitter post, anything, on whose draft you like more. Don't forget, like, comment, subscribe. Nick's going on vacation, going to be beaching. So he might be tan or sunburnt when he comes back next week. So, tune in for that as well. But our part one's going to come out Wednesday. This part two is probably going to come out Friday, Saturday. Give you something to listen to when you're, getting your groceries. So hope you enjoyed it. Again, like, comment, subscribe, especially comment. I think the engagement part is going to be huge for us, especially in the fantasy football aspect. So appreciate the watch, appreciate the listen. Nick, do you have any final words for the people?
Definitely. Just let us know who you thought did better. I think we're going to continue with the divisional breakdowns after this one. We've only got 3 left, if I'm right. I think the AFC East, North, and West. So look out for those in the next couple weeks, and then we're going to move into a little bit more relevant fantasy content as July kicks into gear. Training camp gives us more in the way of actual news to talk about. So.
Yep. Yeah, we have the AFC South recorded. I just got to get that one edited and ready for posting.
Right.
But I wanted to switch it up a little bit because I didn't think the Jags and who's the other one? Jags and Texans video. I didn't know if that one was gonna have good, weekend ratings.
Really?
So
it seemed real engaging to me. But
they try and just slip that one out on a random Wednesday. Hopefully everyone's bored. All right. Peace out, everyone.